if you want to make it in this world, you got to be able to get out there and do something. Not everybody is going to win the lottery or win the gene pool lottery or marry the guy or girl that comes from the family that has a ton of money. And quite frankly, you should want to go out there and get it and make it happen yourself. And that is what is lacking. It's how to deal with people. You can sell an app and you could do a web page or a whatever, or come up with the next whatever thing it is. But at some point, you still got to communicate with someone.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 68 of the Andrew Deitch podcast. Hope you all are having a wonderful Tuesday. I'm sorry to all of you Georgia Bulldog fans out there. It's definitely a sad day here in Atlanta. But hey, what can you expect? Georgia teams always seem to find a great way to choke at the very end. And to be honest, I didn't really have my hopes up. But sorry to start us off on a sad note, but if this is your first time listening here, welcome. Want to thank you so much for checking it out. This podcast is all about having meaningful conversations with the most fascinating people that I know. And I am well aware that there's a million other things you could be potentially listening to right now, but I am humbled that you are listening to the sound of my voice right now. And before you change the channel, I'm going to start talking about my guest. So my guest today is Brian Garland. He is my friend and my mentor. I would view him as a mentor. Mentor is kind of a weird word, but he's always someone that I've looked up to. I've known him since high school. He's a volunteer at my church, and at first I didn't really know what he did for a living. He was just a cool guy, and depending on who you talk to, you might get a bunch of different answers to that question. I knew that he was involved in the Christmas tree business in the winter, and I've had the pleasure of knowing and working for Brian and his family for the past 5 or 6 years at their Christmas tree lots. And their Christmas tree lot, I should say, in Suwanee, Georgia. It's been scaled down a bit, like Brian talks about in this episode. But basically, over the years, I've gotten a much better idea of what they do. And at the end of the day, Brian is an entrepreneur and an amazing salesman. And he's just one of those guys where his job description is so diverse. He just has his fingers in so many different industries, and he knows so many people in different circles. He's just one of the most well-connected people that I know, and he has tons of people all around the country that I'm sure would call him a real friend. And on this episode, Brian shared how he got his start in business, some of his favorite deals and best stories, how his company became the liquidation company for the Georgia Dome demolition, his advice for young people, and what it's like being in business with your family, because he works with his dad and his brother. And right after we started recording, like 30 seconds in, someone came into his office that wanted to talk business. So if you're wondering why the recording was interrupted after the first 30 seconds, that is why. But it was like perfect timing. We hadn't even really started, but I thought it would be funny to include it anyways. So without any further ado, please welcome my friend, Brian Garland. We're live, Brian Garland.
Hello, how are you?
Even though it's not like streaming live to the world right now or anything, no one can hear us, but it's live to us.
Well, we are sitting here. So,
Indeed.
So
that's another thing that kind of separates my podcast is, yeah, look at it. All right, we're back.
Sorry about that.
It's all good.
where I can't even remember where we were.
Take two. We were literally like 30 seconds in. It was probably the most perfect time to get interrupted because we can just start over. But no, it's kind of funny because the things we were just kind of talking about are kind of some stuff that I wanted to talk about on the podcast. But Brian, hello.
Hello.
Again.
This is Brian again, Garland.
Brian Garland. So we were just talking about this. I've known Brian since I was like 15 or 16 years old, and we met at church.
Yeah.
We were on the setup team for a little high school retreat thing that our church would always host. And Brian, like I I didn't really know what you did for a living when I met you. I just knew you were kind of this kind of not
gypsy.
Just kind of like a crazy, funny guy that I was like, this guy's cool. Like you had a demeanor about you that most people don't have, I guess. Just kind of that.
I mean, that's my thing, to impress 15 and 16, 17-year-old young men. That is really what I was looking for. Just kidding. Just kidding.
But yeah, so it's kind of funny because I feel like you have a bunch of different aspects of who Brian is. I mean, like you have a bunch of different business ventures. You come from a line, like you said, 3rd generation sawmill, right? And you have, people that might know you from the local community may not know all this kind of stuff. They just see you as Brian with the couple kids and the wife and the house and the.
It is a common question that people have for me is, what is it that you do? And
what do you tell them if they ask?
So my main thing would be I'm in the industrial surplus business. What that translates to is really my kids like to eat, and so I'm a provider of said food. And my wife really, really likes a roof over our head and food on the table. So I've laughed and joked and said that she and I are in the iron and steel business, that she irons and I steal. and actually neither one of those things are true. She doesn't iron and I don't steal. So, we're workers. We're opportunists. We buy, for the most part, equipment, industrial type equipment, not like your big yellow land moving equipment, but say a factory, and we'll take and from anywhere.
Like specialized equipment that
typically,
sometimes.
Yes. So sawmill equipment or packaging equipment, and we will find an avenue to go with it, whether it's selling it to go back to work somewhere, or just if it's broken, we'll send it to the scrapyard. And we also have a business where we rent props to the movie industry here in Atlanta. We have a huge movie industry that is growing rapidly. And so there's a need for when these big superhero Marvel type movies are out, they need these, what you see in a movie, it looks like they're running through a factory or some sort of industrial park. Chances are that's just a set, and they have stuff that comes from guys like me there to be the background filler. So we are constantly looking to monetize our products, whatever we get in, to go in a handful of different industries. So we want to have a handful of different revenue streams.
Yeah. Got your fingers in all kinds of different industries.
Yeah, I think we're extremely ADD.
Yeah.
What it boils down to is it's like squirrel, holy crap, I need to do that. So
yeah.
And your listeners can't see what my office looks like, but it appears kind of like a bunch of just stuff blew up.
Just to give some examples, we've got Jeep doors from his Jeep. Mm-hmm. We've got a bunch of like cords and wires to equipment. We've got some like keypads to certain like stuff. We've got an old phone. We've got all kinds of glass things. It's just like
glassware, labware.
Yeah. Gas mask, a little eagle statue. Like there's just all kinds of. There's literally, you could probably spend 2 hours just looking at all the like stuff.
This is this device here actually is to splice fiber optic cable together.
Whoa.
Right here, yeah. So, and then if you wanted to test the signal, that's this stuff here, yeah.
So there's just all kinds of
skills.
equipment and strange specialized devices for doing all kinds. And we've also got a pylon from the Georgia Dome here,
And a 50-yard marker.
50-yard marker, all kinds of wacky stuff. But so that's your long-winded description of people ask what you do, of course.
Yeah, I could give you a little shorter one, but I like to go the long.
Yes.
I want to make it as complicated as possible.
Of course. But, a second ago you said you're third generation sawmill, all that kind of stuff. So the Brian of today is obviously not the Brian of past, for better or for worse. And I think
He's evolved.
Yes, exactly. And I'm definitely all about that. I'm always trying to figure out how can I not change who I am, but how can I become a better version of myself, I guess. Like, how can I evolve in a positive way and shed some of the negative things or whatever? I think everyone should be kind of trying to do that.
I don't know if you're asking me that question or
not
not,
necessarily.
but I can tell you what.
I was going to say, because I would love for you to kind of just give us a quick synopsis of how you kind of changed from who you were, as a kid or whatever, into the Brian of today, and who molded that. How did you get there, and what happened?
Well, I can say this, that Brian's still changing and still looking to grow. And I know that the 60-year-old me is going to be like, holy crap, the 43-year-old you should have known this. And because the 43-year-old me is now saying that the 30-year-old me should have known this, and the 20-year-old, and so on and so forth. I mean, it's a constant quest for knowledge, learning who I am. And yes, I have evolved. I would say that the main things that have stayed, it's probably easier to tell me what stayed the same. Loyalty is the thing that has stayed the same for me, because it's what is so important to me. Listening to people, not trying to be a know-it-all, caring about my family. And I'm married to one of the most remarkable women in the world, in my eyes, who changed my life for the better. And I got 3 great kids who have changed me an awful lot. From bank account mainly has gotten smaller because of all 3 of them. But no, they're why I want to evolve and be a better person. And but the back to your original question, the 20-something Brian was all about the money, and just wasn't paying attention to all the details.
Did you know that you wanted to be in business for yourself? Like, did you know you wanted to be like the quote unquote entrepreneur, or did you see yourself just going and getting a job? Or
well, I always kind of figured nobody wanted to hire me, so I wasn't hireable. And growing up working in a sawmill as a kid, growing up in the mean streets of Dunwoody, and then it was like you were living 2 different lives, where you had we kids just didn't understand what that meant that I grew up with, what it meant to go and work literally in a sawmill on the weekends and through the summer. That was my life. And so I had this one life of going out and hanging out and doing all the preppy stuff. And then this whole other world where I was physical labor, treated like just a laborer, and no special treatment.
And were you working for your dad at that point?
I was working for my dad, and who had given us a lot of opportunity, me and my brother, very, very young age. So yes, I always knew that I wanted to be in business for myself or with my family. When I was 8, my brother was 11, we actually brought in like 100 Christmas trees and sold them in front of my stepmother's furniture store. And we made like $1,000, give or take, and ate all the profits up in pizza. And from there...
Whose idea was the Christmas tree thing?
So it was there was my dad and uncle. And my uncle's in North Carolina, and which that's a whole nother story for another time of how we actually even got, my family's in the Christmas tree business in the mountains of North Carolina, and that's a crazy cool story. But my dad wanted me and my brother to learn how to work and the value of $1. And so we brought down trees and we sold them, and we had to learn how to deal with the public. And from that point, it just grew and grew and grew, where by the time I was a senior in high school, I had 15 Christmas tree lots and 30-some odd employees working and selling trees. It was quite an operation. And we had a lot of fun. It was a lot of hard work, and but
obviously
it taught me a lot.
Christmas trees are very seasonal, of course.
Yeah.
so
hard to sell them in February.
Yeah, definitely. So what were you doing in the meantime of the year? Because that's what a lot of people, I'm sure, ask you, like, "Oh, is the Christmas tree thing full time? What do you do the rest of the year?"
Well, so then was school.
Yeah.
And but then while in high school age, I was working for my dad at the sawmill. And when I got out of school, I didn't go to college. My brother was at Georgia and had found a opportunity for us to get involved in. And so we went down another wood products route, and kind of that business evolved from a packaging material into a animal bedding material, all the way to some crazy dips and turns and things along the way, staying mainly in the wood product line of work. And
so when you decided to not go to college and pursue the thing that Drew had found, or whatever, this opportunity that Drew presented, were you expecting to go to college at that point, or did like your parents expect you to go and you're kind of like didn't want to?
I don't think that there was an expectation of me going to school. It was school was not really my thing.
Yeah.
I see that there's a tremendous amount of benefits to school, and I probably I would have wasted time there. I was too, I'd like to say, immature when it came to studying habits back then. And I think that the today me would absolutely love college and learning that way. But then I was just dead set on making money. Yeah. And I could sit here and tell you, or if anybody's listening who's in school, that the things that I've learned along the way through this process of working for myself and working with my family, that I wish somebody had told me all the way back when I was 12, 13, 14, of how to study. I think college is super important. But studying what you want to do is what's even more important.
Yeah.
If you
so
want
you should go in with a goal in mind, kind of thing. Always.
If you don't have a goal, then you don't have a direction. No direction, you're just wandering. And even though we're not very specific in our current business of what we buy, we still study it. We still take a look at it and figure out what direction it's going to go. I saw a bumper sticker yesterday. It said, "I'm not lost. I'm just exploring." Well, I say that if you're exploring, you better figure out where you're wanting to go. Otherwise, you're going to get lost. And in the business world, lost is broke. That's kind of what I see. So it doesn't matter if you're liquidating a sports complex or a plywood plant. There's a buyer and a direction to get to that buyer in every case.
So you and your brother, so just to, so you didn't go to school, you went and worked with your brother, and then you kind of just went down the road of these wood products and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and we were doing land development from the clearing the land side. So we'd go in, cut all the timber off of it, and send the different species of wood and grade of wood of logs to the different mills. And we that was part of what we did. And then I actually sold out of that business and took a couple of year siesta and then went back to work. That was about around the time I met you. It was when I was coming back into the world of work.
What made you want to take the break or whatever?
Money.
Money was good?
There was some stuff going on, and
yeah, I feel you.
You sometimes, because I'm a pretty God-fearing man, God will speak to you and tell you it's time to sit down for a few minutes and take a look around. And I couldn't be more thankful for that he allowed that opportunity to happen. So, but he let me know when it was time to go back to work, and been at it ever since. That's
awesome. So when you guys were doing the wood stuff, what happened with were you guys still doing the Christmas tree stuff during that point too?
And still doing Christmas trees.
Still to this day.
Absolutely. It's just scaled way back down on the retail side of things.
Yeah.
And we look at it as an opportunity to be able to spend time with young people. We don't put, as you know, a price tag on any Christmas tree that comes out. Like, you'll go some places and they all have like a tag on them with a price tag. We want people to learn how to communicate and be a part of a community and build some self-esteem, that they can do something, that you can talk to somebody. You don't have to text somebody. You can actually communicate with them and negotiate. And I think that we have wanted those opportunities for people that we like, and have had mainly young men come back and work and sell trees for years and years and years and years, from high school through college and sometimes after. And we just enjoy being able to spend the time with all these young people.
Yeah.
It keeps us young too. So.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to say, I feel like that's really important to keep situations like that alive in today's world, because especially a lot of young guys, like you said, they don't know how to talk to people in real life. They don't know how to negotiate. They don't know how to sell stuff. And that's one thing that's kind of interesting about your business currently and what you've kind of been raised doing is, I think a lot of businesses now are trying to be so digital and there's no like physical stuff. And like your business is like all physical stuff. Like you're buying and trading like real objects that exist in the real world, rather than like information or data or bits and bytes or whatever it might be.
And there's a lot to be said for the digital age, and there's, wow, how people have made tons and tons of money in the digital aspect. And we hear a lot about those where so-and-so creates an app and it's Candy Crush, and they're literally crushing it. They're killing it. But for every one Candy Crush, there's probably 1 million that didn't make it.
Because the barrier to entry is kind of like so low that
it's if I can put my hands on it and I can touch it, then I know that I can hand it to somebody and it has some sort of value. And if you're able to do that, then it's real. And when something's real, you can make money off of it.
And you can say whatever price you want as long as you can.
Yeah, within reasonable.
Yeah.
And a thing is worth what somebody else thinks it's worth. So I literally just had a squirrel moment there for a second.
I was going to say something about the physical stuff too, because that's one thing that kind of separates this podcast from a lot of other podcasts is people want to jump into the space and they're like, oh, maybe I can get a 15-minute interview with this guy over Skype or whatever. And it just like lacks the realness to it. Like it's just this quick little cheesy interaction. The audio's not good and it's over the internet. But like I love all of my podcasts are in person. And I love that because even through just the little things that people can hear, like, they can hear the opening of a water bottle or the creak of the chair or whatever. And they know that we're in the same space rather than this weird fabricated, like digital.
This is absolutely not a radio station or sound booth.
That's very true. You can probably hear like some of the cars outside or whatever too.
The thing, and I know that the word millennial today is with my generation, Generation X, and the folks that have come before me, the baby boomers and so on. We see that you have a lot of the millennial folks who don't want to do anything that is hard, that requires time and patience. A friend of mine who is a football player for the Atlanta Falcons said to me one time, he says, for the amount of money that they pay me, Brian, if they hand me a broom, I'm going to start sweeping. And I found that incredible, that you have to be willing to do whatever the job is. And if you want to make it in this world, you got to be able to get out there and do something. Not everybody is going to win the lottery or win the gene pool lottery or marry the guy or girl that comes from the family that has a ton of money. And quite frankly, anybody, in my opinion, you should want to go out there and get it and make it happen yourself. You're here doing this. You asked me, you followed up with me, you came here to my office, and I have appreciation for that. And through this, and I'm speaking to you, Andrew, is and if somebody's listening, they get something out of this. You'll be the recipient of good things and knowledge because you've taken the time and you're going through the right channels to move forward. And you're getting experience, real experience. And that is what is lacking, I think, in so much right now. It's how to deal with people. Because you can sell an app and you could do a web page or a whatever, or come up with the next whatever thing it is. But at some point, you still got to communicate with someone. It is so important to take the phone away from your thumbs and actually just type in a number and call somebody and have a conversation. Can I say, this is total side, just tangent, what totally, completely just makes me crazy is somebody will text me, I'm driving. I'll call them back and they won't answer. But they were just texting me. You have your phone. Now, I get you could be in the middle of something, but there's just some people in the world they just don't want to have a phone conversation.
Yeah.
And I have made more deals in business because of phone calls. Mm-hmm. I sold a guy one time on eBay, one item on eBay. And when we finally got on the phone with each other, I sold him an entire tractor and trailer load of equipment that was not on eBay.
That's awesome.
But he didn't, because we had that conversation.
Exactly.
And I didn't have to pay eBay a commission. And so it was even more money.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So it pays to pick up the phone and make a phone call.
Yeah.
To
and
go
people are
somewhere.
scared of that. I even see it, because I work at the escape game place. In order to get a clue during the game, someone has to pick up the phone and call the game master to get a clue. Kids, whenever there's parents and families playing, the parents always like, all right, call the game master. And the kid's like, I don't want to do it. Everyone's always so scared to just even talk to someone in real life rather than being able to think out a response or text someone a quick thing or whatever. It's like you said, it's kind of sad.
I love hearing stories about my dad and from people that he's done business with over the years. And I couldn't tell you how many times I've heard, they're like, yeah, I bought this, that, and the other from your dad, and I literally didn't even need any of it. But he was so convincing on the phone that I felt like I needed to get it, and so there it is.
Yeah.
And it's if you're in front of somebody and you can shake their hand and look in their eyes, you can get a lot of deals done. It's easy to say no through a text message. It's easy to say no on a phone sometimes. But when you're in front of someone, then they get a sense of where you're really coming from, because emotion doesn't always translate. Mm-hmm. I talk with my hands and nobody can see that. So if I'm texting you, typically my text messages are Andrew, you've gotten text from me, mm-hmm. and they're just a couple of words. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the way I feel like we should communicate that way. And communicate like this. Mm-hmm. Just have a conversation.
Exactly.
Our world would be in a hell of a lot better place if we could just sit down and have a freaking conversation mm-hmm. about whatever.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do with this show, is just sit down with people, have a real conversation, not be interrupted by the phone, not be, because a lot of times when you're talking with somebody, you'll start thinking, oh, let me show you this video or whatever, and then you go down a rabbit hole, and then all of a sudden you're both texting somebody or whatever. And it's like when you can actually sit down and purposefully try to have like a meaningful conversation and maybe learn something from that person, it's really valuable. And people really enjoy listening to that kind of stuff because they're just lacking it in normal life.
I love talking to people, younger, older, same age. I stopped by a guy's office a little while ago, and these are some guys who I just admire greatly, and I always enjoy having a conversation with them. I feel like I'm smarter when I leave from being around them, and just because of how just absolutely intelligent they are. And you never know. I mean, hell, I've learned a lot from dumb people. You know what you don't want mm-hmm. out of life.
Very true.
Spend some time around a dumb person and you'll figure it out quick that that's not a lot of fun. I mean, mm-hmm. Except for, they say ignorance is bliss, but but crap, I know too much already to know that I don't want to be ignorant. Mm-hmm. So
what do you mentioned hanging around with smart people or hanging around with people that you admire or whatever. How do you, obviously we're hanging out. I admire you. I've been able to make a connection with you.
Look at me. I'm kidding.
No, but I think there's probably a lot of people listening to this that are like, well, that's easy for you to say, Andrew. You had connections or you knew people or whatever. And so how do you form connections like that? Like, how do you meet someone who could potentially bring value to your life in some way?
That's pretty simple. Just be you. That's that's an awesome question, actually. And I've heard the term been thrown around the last handful of years of he's a white male. Yeah, I'm a white male. But I have to show up to work. There's no check just waiting for me. If I don't sell something, I don't make any money. That's just the way it works. I'm gonna give you a story, and I'll do my best to tell it pretty fast. So there's this guy now who grew up in a super, super poor part of this country. I mean, super poor. Like, cut a hole in his pocket so he had something to play with poor. I'm talking super poor. So
I've never heard that expression. That's amazing.
So when he was 17 years old, 16, 17 years old, he went to his dad and he says, it's just not going to work. So they went down and got his birth certificate, and where he was from, they just erased and changed the birth date by a year. So he left and he went in the Marine Corps.
So they just lied. And
they lied about his age. Went in the Marine Corps, went and served this great country, and did what he needed to do. And he actually was coming to Atlanta, and he had like $37 to his name. And on the bus ride to Atlanta, the bus broke down, and his bag was next to the engine, and all of his clothes got burnt up, messed up. So they ended up giving him $100 to replace all of his stuff. So he had the clothes on his back and $137 in a town he didn't know. And his English wasn't even good. And he was from America. If somebody was to say covers, like you get in a bed and you cover up, he said kiver up. And he was working in a bowling alley at night, and after he got off work at night, he'd go and collect bookie bets, and he was working in a lumber yard during the days. And when they shut down that lumber yard, he went and he would buy lumber in North Carolina and bring it to cabinet shops in Atlanta and sell it. And he did this and built up a business. And that guy's my dad. So 10th grade education and $137 and nowhere to live. And he turned it into something. So when people say they can't get out of where they are, I don't know if we can cuss on this.
Yeah, we can totally cuss.
But that's bullshit. Some people are pigeonholed because you've been told, but you've been told that you can't do, and you've been told if people know innately if somebody's negative or positive. You just know that. And if you're around negative people all the time, leave. Just leave. Go be around somebody positive. Find something positive. If things aren't going the way you want them in your life, don't blame others. Leave. You change your scenery. It is your story as they say now as my nephew and kids say, it's, oh, my story. Well, how are you going to make your story you? I hear all the time, I want to, when, if, just freaking do it. To be young at this right now, the world, there's so many opportunities. You go out and you find them and you go after them. So I don't care if you're white or black or green or purple or yellow or whatever. The only thing that's holding you back is you. I don't know if I've ever said this to you, Andrew, but when you're pointing your finger at somebody, just remember there's always three pointing right back at you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're saying that person over there is what's causing me all these problems, there's three fingers pointing right back at you. So what are you going to do about it? And if you go, well, what can I do? There's nothing I can do. Sure there is. Where do you want to be in life? Who do you want to be in this life? If you find yourself age 30 and living at your parents' house and a job that you don't like, I'm sorry, you may want to make a change. Now, if you're 30 and living at your parents' house, I hope it's just because your home is being built or that you're taking care of them. And money's not for everybody. But don't complain about what you don't have if you're not willing to go out and get it.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, people just aren't willing to go out and do hard stuff. It's like it's the reason why people are obese. It's the reason why people are stuck. They don't want to change their ways and they don't want to go out and actually do something. They just would rather sit and be stagnant.
I mean, if you're waiting for somebody else to do something for you, you're going to be waiting a long time. Mm-hmm. No different than anybody who's waiting for the government to change the way things are. They ain't going to do it. You have to do it. I think one of the best charitable organizations are churches. They'll help you through a time, but they're not going to do it for you. They'll show up and, most churches I know have mission groups. They'll go out and they'll paint your house, but they're not going to go live in the house and help you live in the house for you. They will paint it. They will fix it, but you gotta continue on taking care of the stuff in life that you want. I mean,
I think one thing also is people don't look at how they can actually provide value, because that's the only way that you can make money, is if you're actually providing value to someone else and you get in exchange money. I mean, obviously there's, people can say, well, what about this situation? What about this? In the grand scheme of things, the way that you make money is by exchanging your value. If you're going to flip burgers at McDonald's, you're not worth very much. The value's pretty low. Pretty much anyone can do it, and most people don't want to do it.
Those, it's kind of like the whole fight over minimum wage, and that minimum wage should be higher for a person working a
livable wage and all this
livable stuff. Wage. Well, let me just tell you something here, and some people get pissed off at me or not.
It's fine.
It is what it is. If you're willing to fight for minimum wage getting higher, then you probably have the ability to go out and earn more than minimum wage. Minimum wage jobs were originally created for young people to have a place to go work. The whole idea is for people to elevate themselves. But if you find yourself at 40-something years old and you're working the French fry fryer at McDonald's, I hope it's your franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And or that you've just said, hey, I have to provide for my family. See, that person who has to provide for their family is going to figure out what they have to do in order to get where they need to be. So they'll work the fryer at McDonald's, and they're going to leave and they're going to go work another job.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to combine. But if your lifelong goal is to work, cash registers at Walmart, then shut up.
Mm-hmm.
Just elevate yourself.
Mm-hmm. So, for people out there, like, if they're feeling like, well, I don't have any skills, I don't have a college degree, I'm not desirable. Like, what should people be doing? What is that?
I can't tell you what to be doing. I can tell you first you have to ask yourself, what is it? Yeah, there's a mindset. What do you want to do? Mm-hmm. There's always an opportunity. As long as there's more than one person, there's an opportunity. So one of the things I do with my kids is they have to be able to dig a 3 by 3 by 3 foot hole. And the theory behind that is that if you can dig a 3 by 3 by 3 foot hole, you're not above digging the said hole. And B, you're qualified to do a job. In one of the greatest movies of all time, Caddyshack, the quote is, "The world needs ditch diggers too." Mm-hmm. And I know some ditch diggers that have big old houses, and they started off digging ditches. Mm-hmm. And some of their stories will send chills down your neck because they start off with nothing, which is the thing that I think that this millennials, they see that people have gotten something and they just want to start off with $150,000, $200,000 a year job without putting in the time. It's not about how smart you are when it comes to books and things of that nature. Sometimes it just has to do with understanding relationships and experience, how to handle a situation. And I always say, those who've been given much is expected. So if you're paid a lot of money, there's a lot of responsibility that comes along with it. And if you're not able to step up to that challenge, you're not going to be making that kind of money for very long because you're going to get fired. Mm. Hey, like Drake said, we started at the bottom, now we're here. He didn't say how long it took him. He didn't say that he started last night. But he has arrived. Mm-hmm. And I guarantee you, he's put in the work. And touring around this country is a lot of work. So, people say, oh, they want to be the next rapper, they want to be the next this, they want to be the next that. I mean, Facebook, they want to be the next Zuckerberg. Well, he programmed 24 hours a day, day in, day out. Mm-hmm. He put in the work. Mm-hmm. And he was extremely lucky. And I don't know him, but I would imagine that he would tell you the same thing.
Right place, right time, right amount of hours, all that kind of stuff.
Any pro athlete that I know, any of them, from one of them was a catcher for the Red Sox, who's a buddy of mine, and he said, what if they didn't need a catcher that year? Mm-hmm. Then I'm, he's an accountant somewhere selling insurance. Mm-hmm. So,
but there's also that there's that combination of being quote unquote lucky and also busted your chops enough up until that point that you could fulfill that spot. It's almost like you make your own luck, because you could argue that everyone gets opportunities, but 99% of people don't take them or don't have the skills to actually follow through. Yeah,
well, you gotta. There's the will to win, and if you're willing to risk it, you can make it. Chances are you're never going to get more out than you're willing to put in. You have to work and be willing to take a chance.
Like the opportunity for failure needs
absolutely.
to be there.
If I could sit here and tell you how to do what I do, but if you don't have an extreme high pain tolerance and understand that we're taking calculated risks, and they're not all, and there's no guarantees. It'll weigh on you. I mean, it will absolutely give you some heartburn, huge swings. So, I always get this one is, oh, so you're like one of those guys from Storage Wars. And I'm like, well, those guys, they're buying like one little
storage unit,
little room. I'm buying an entire factory.
Yeah.
Now the good thing is I get to walk around in it and I get to see what it is.
That show's super fake too, by the way.
It's totally
fake. If
fake.
anyone's listening, it's super fake.
I actually know some of the guys that put stuff in some of those containers that are prop guys.
That's hilarious.
So it's I actually went to one of those storage auctions, and it was hilarious to see these guys with all they had. I mean, one guy had like 4 or 5 locks on him. He was ready to buy, and I'm going, hey, I don't mind gambling, but what is it that you think that you're going to get? I mean, it's a total crapshoot.
Yeah.
I mean, fun, but so we're not like them.
Yeah, or maybe even people would say like Pawn Stars or something like that.
Or pickers.
Yeah,
American pickers.
American pickers.
We're more like recyclers. We want to put something back to work.
That's cool, man. Because I mean, a lot of people are they just want to throw the thing away or not repurpose it or whatever, and that's actually cool that not only can you guys get a profit for that kind of stuff, but it's also the satisfaction of being able to repurpose something and give it new life or whatever, get it to the right person is kind of a cool thing. Whereas it might just sit in a junkyard or something for years and years and years and never get used.
I bought from a guy one time. I was driving through the backwoods of South Carolina and came across this one place and stopped in, and this guy says, hey, you want to buy that thing over there? And I was like, sure. Had no idea what it was, but I knew that there was the front end of a truck sitting on it and an old box springs mattress with all the fabric was missing laying on top of it as well. And I went over and looked at it and pulled the model number off of this what's called a filter press. And it had been sitting there for years, I think like 10 years. And I made 3 phone calls and sold it. So he held it for 10 years and I owned it for 15 minutes. And
what was it worth? Like, was it a pretty expensive piece of machinery, or was it just a little?
If I had gotten to it, 5 years before, it'd have been worth a lot more. But I bought it for $1,000 and sold it for $10,000 in 15 minutes. All because I was willing to pick up the phone and make a telephone call. Mm-hmm. And
also you've created a pretty vast network. I would say you're one of the most well-connected people that I know, as far as just knowing the right guy a lot of times.
Well, you got to put yourself out there. Mm-hmm. And you won't ever, nobody will ever know you unless you're willing to get to know them. Mm. if you're willing to, talk to somebody about them, then you know how to get connected. Mm-hmm. And you'd asked me, and I told you the story about my dad and opportunity and meeting people. If you're sitting on your couch at home doing nothing, you're not going to meet anybody. If you're playing Call of Duty, chances are you're not networking. And I don't mean going to some networking meeting. I mean, it doesn't have to be all official.
Cheesy or yeah.
Yeah, but going somewhere and having a conversation, you just never know who you're gonna meet. Go play if you play golf, go play golf, but show up as a single to play with somebody else. Sit at the bar at a restaurant sometime. You never know who you'll end up sitting next to. Put yourself out there in a situation and around in situations where there's other people that are successful. It's a lot of times who you know. Mm-hmm. But the guy walks in here and has a conversation with me. That's why we were interrupted. I didn't know him until about a month ago, but I met him from a guy who introduced to another guy who introduced to another guy, and here opportunity comes walking through the door. Mm-hmm. Hopefully that's because I've done the right thing and treated somebody right along the way.
Exactly. And that's kind of, I mean, people want to talk about like karma and doing the right thing and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of times people think business is all about screwing the right guy over, screwing people over to get ahead or whatever. And I would argue that like you're living proof that if you make the right connections, if you screw somebody over, like, what was his name? Peter that just came over a second ago?
Jeff,
my bad. Peter.
It's all right.
I don't know.
It's okay.
Jeff was saying that, some guy screwed him over and he's like, I know how this works. Like I'll I'm not going to do business with them again or whatever. And so it's kind of this idea that everyone thinks it's all about screwing over. And I would say it's almost more just about how you can help everybody because they're going to probably reciprocate that.
Absolutely. I have a deal down in Middle Georgia, and I was looking to buy a whole bunch of stuff, and the people decided they wanted, not that they're not smarter than me and not that I'm smarter than them, but I was interested in buying a whole bunch of, a bunch of stuff, and they narrowed it down to oh no, they just wanted to sell one item. And so I basically said, no, I'm pretty much going to back out of everything because I'm not going to waste my time to go down for one item. Mm-hmm. And which also stops me from buying a whole heck of a lot more stuff that was there. If you can't be greedy. And it may sound like, oh, well, he's not willing to go down there. Well, I am willing. I'm just not willing to get stepped on. Mm-hmm. Because it's not any fun. And I don't want to get stepped on, so I'm not going to step on somebody else. So it's kind of it doesn't pay. In the long run, it just won't pay. Mm-hmm. to be that guy. Mm-hmm. Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. I was going to ask you, I know you have some crazy buying, selling stories. Like you were saying, that guy said, hey, you want to buy that thing over there? And in 15 minutes,
yep,
you're able to flip it for 10 times. What are some of your best and maybe even worst, just like best stories of taking something, being able to flip it or whatever? I guess just your most memorable items or whatever that you've sold.
I sold a bunch of furniture that came out of a sports facility, a big sports complex, if you will. A lot of the furniture from that facility was sold to a guy in the strip club business. I mean, he's a buyer. Mm-hmm. It's part of economy. Let's see here. We had
Was it memorable because you had to deal with that guy, or what?
It's just memorable in that it was an interesting sale. All in all, just how the whole deal was just interesting.
How it all strung together.
I had bought a piece of equipment in a bunch of equipment up in Virginia one time, and me and my dad and brother we like to fuss with each other and mess with each other and try and see who can sell something the fastest and for the most money. And so my dad was saying, "Oh, I got this one piece sold for like $21,000." And I said, "Well, I actually have an offer." I mean, he kept on bragging and bragging and bragging. He'd called me and said, "Hey, I got a buyer for that one piece for $21,000." And I was like, "Well, that's fantastic. So do you mean to throw away this written offer for $90,000 for that same item?" And he said, "No, I think we'll take your guy's offer." So same item. I sold it for 90.
He was going to get 21.
Yeah, so
that's pretty good.
Those deals don't come along every day, but they're fun, and I enjoy it. I enjoy doing stuff like that. You just never know. And that way, and here's the thing, that was the first time I'd ever done business with that guy. First time. We've done a handful of deals since, but first time I ever dealt with him. So
that's cool.
It was a good deal.
I feel like we have to talk about the Georgia Dome story. If we can. I don't know if you're allowed
we can.
Okay.
That's where furniture went to. What would you like to know about the Georgia Dome?
Well, how did it even? Because I just remember. So for people that are listening, so this winter I worked a few days at the old Garland tree lot here, and it came about that I hadn't heard the story completely, but you guys were heavily involved in the demolition and all that of the Georgia
liquidation.
Dome. The liquidation
of the Georgia Dome. So
how did that all come about, and what? I'm sure there's all kinds of crazy stories from that, but
yeah. So actually, the company Schneider Industries out of St. Louis, we're friends with the owner of the company and have done a handful of joint ventures on some projects throughout the years. And Schneider they did like Cowboy Stadium, Candlestick, the Detroit Tigers. I mean, a whole bunch of sport buildings.
What do they do for them?
They'll auction them off. They're an auction company.
Gotcha.
And so
the old Cowboy Stadium.
The old Cowboy Stadium.
Gotcha.
And they're actually just have done the Joe Louis in Detroit.
Nice.
The
one that didn't. Was
that
the one
that was different. That was the Silver Dome, also in Detroit. But and then the word on that was actually somebody had broken in the night before and cut a whole bunch of the wires on that one.
Really?
So that's why it didn't come down.
That's funny. They were trying to sabotage it.
Yeah, it was like homeless people were living there for years. I mean, it's been abandoned for years. But back to the Georgia Dome. So, phone rings one afternoon. And it was the owner of Schneider, and he says, "Hey, we're going to be in Atlanta. Do you know any PR firms?" And I was like, I was going to call you. You were on my list of people to call today because I figured y'all would end up getting the dome, of which we wanted to go in and be buyers.
Mm-hmm. Basically buying all the stuff inside of the dome.
Any and all the stuff, whatever. And so it ends up, that job got pushed back and pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. So basically, long story short, Schneider came to us and said, "Hey, y'all are local. We're not. Do you mind just running everything for us?" And so we did. We coordinated all the stuff with anything that was happening there pretty much, except for a handful of items. We coordinated it. And
how to get rid of it and sell it, basically?
Absolutely. So we just worked with them to...
And one thing that surprised me, just from seeing some of the videos and pictures and stuff you showed me, was how much of the stuff... Because for people that are listening, if you don't know, so the Georgia Dome is the old Falcons Stadium, the Atlanta Falcons, and they've built a new stadium, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's beautiful. It's right next door, and they were demolishing the Georgia Dome. So
That's right.
How much stuff they just left in there to not be repurposed was kind of just staggering. Like,
it is crazy.
Even just the things that, like you were saying in Arthur Blank's like suite and stuff, like that they wouldn't even repurpose, like things that you would think they'd want to keep, like the statues and like the Georgia State memorabilia and like, you know, all kinds of weird stuff.
There was so much stuff that was left behind, but therein lies the thing of, if you expect, so the Georgia Dome was run by the GWCC, Georgia World Congress Center, which basically means government. I want y'all to hear me out there and
In
understand.
Podcast world.
If you expect the government is going to do something for you, you're going to be waiting a long time unless it is part of the, you know, the fire department or police department. Those people will show up and help, but the rest of them are just taking your money. I saw it wasted so heavily down there. I mean, it was sickening to see how poorly it had been run.
Because the people running it were not business people thinking about how they could monetize on this stuff. They were just like, this is old stuff. Here you can have it.
It's just, you know, the difference between public and private. Mm-hmm. When it's, if you get something for nothing, typically you're not going to value it. But if you have to put work into getting something, then you're going to value it. Mm-hmm. Meaning, if you've just got a facility that's being funded by taxpayer money, you don't care where the money comes from.
Mm-hmm. It seems like it came out of thin air.
Absolutely.
Seems like you got it for free.
So what's to care? Mm-hmm. But if it's a privately held and owned facility, you're going to know everything that is there. I mean, they tried. You know, that's why Schneider and us were there, was to help monetize. But there was just so much that was missed.
So did they like make an offer and you guys, or did they just say we get a cut of the profits of whatever you liquidate, or how did the deal go down?
Though it was complex, so that was
but it wasn't
a handful of entities.
It wasn't like you made an offer on the whole dome and they just like gave it to you for whatever, and whatever you made, or.
Well, we bought a ton of stuff, and so yes would be the answer to part of that. Would be that we made an offer on a whole bunch of stuff, and purchased a ton of stuff, and in that we also helped with just making sure the stuff got out of there, and we helped with the memorabilia sale, and that's why I have some of these items in here. But I can't tell you all of it.
Gotcha.
Got to have some secrets.
Yes, that's fine. I was just curious because I didn't know how that type of deal is even structured, or how it even goes down. Because that's just, I mean, most people are so foreign to that world that it was just, I was curious about it.
And honestly, it was foreign to me until I got into it.
Yeah.
But it's like anything. You find a starting point and you just start. Sometimes you don't know where the starting point is, so you just start where you can. It's okay to make a mistake. Just learn from them. I know that seems so cliche and like you've heard that a zillion times, but it's the reason you've heard it a zillion times because it's the truth.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Cause when I found out you guys were like part of that, I was just like, what? That's so crazy. Cause I mean,
it was a ton of work. A ton of work.
Mm-hmm. Did you guys get the workers to help you guys, or were you guys involved in like hiring of that, or were those like Schneider's people, or were they?
No. So anybody?
Because you guys don't really have employees with your business, really.
Well,
do
we
you?
have subcontractors.
Gotcha.
So we had our subs were there, and I was there. Mm-hmm. That was part of the deal. Is me and or my brother had to be there all the time
to supervise it, pretty much.
So we'll just say that not a lot of sleep took place for over a month.
Wow.
It's crazy town. Mm-hmm. It was crazy town. So
yeah.
if you're looking for a jumbotron, I may know where one is.
That's awesome. That's pretty cool. Well, hey, maybe you never know. Maybe someone listening is looking for something like that.
Anybody out there need a jumbotron? Give us a call.
I was gonna ask you as well. I kind of wanted to jump back to this for a second, but we were talking about like you have like a really solid network of people that you know. Do you proactively like do anything out of the ordinary to keep in contact with people like that? Is it like a systematized like, I haven't called this person in a while, I should probably give them a call, or do you do anything like proactively to make sure you keep people in your network, or is it just kind of like just regular business? Hey, I thought of this person, I'll give them a call. Or
yeah, for me, it's more organic. Mm-hmm. I get I don't even know how many emails a day, and the big problem with me getting a bunch of emails a day is that I don't necessarily, there's no real connection there. So I typically pick up the phone and I call somebody and then I send them an email. But relationships will stay in good form as long as you have treated people properly. So do I have any kind of schedule? Call so-and-so this week? Nope. There are people who I just call, hey, what's going on? How's everything going? But no, I just, as things are moving, you end up calling people because you're in that mode. And it's kind of crazy how it kind of works like that for us, for me. So no, I'm not an email generator.
You don't have like a spreadsheet of everyone you know and make sure you call them every 3 months or something like that. Because there's people out there that are kind of crazy with that kind of stuff. They need like a rigid structure, and I would have guessed that was not the case with you. I was just asking just to out of curiosity. But
no, but like if there's anybody out there that is like that, they can get in touch with you, Andrew, and they can get in touch with me because it's always nice. Could use somebody that wants to be a cold caller,
right?
If that's what you're into, give us a call. We may have a spot for you in the lineup here.
That's awesome.
But no, it's relationships, which goes back to the network of people. In what we do, there's a handful of times where I'm not selling necessarily the same thing over and over and over again. So I may pick up the phone and call someone, and because they don't see me as a person that's going to call them 80 zillion times, they'll give me the time. And they may say, oh, well, I don't need that thing, but call so-and-so over at so-and-so company. I think that they were looking for one of those. And I'll just say, hey, can I use your name?
Yeah.
Yeah, old John over there at so-and-so told me to give you a call. Oh, John did? Yeah. I don't know John from Adam's House Cat all that well, but I now have somewhat of his endorsement.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is kind of a unique thing with this business. You can't be afraid to get your feelings hurt a little bit too.
Yeah.
It happens. And you just have to, every no is just that much closer to a yes.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask you too, sometimes things that you have are super specialized items, and to the right person, that's worth a ton of money. But to the wrong person, it's trash.
Yeah.
How do you determine, you've got to keep an eye on the market. You got to see what previous items have sold for. You got to look for what people are willing to spend, all this kind of stuff. But how, is there a way that you kind of come up with a price for a thing? Because if you buy it for a certain price, some people would say oh, that's kind of messed up, man. You're making 90% profit over that thing you sold. That's kind of messed up. You're screwing over the guy or whatever. How do you come up with what's a fair price or whatever?
It's worth what somebody's willing to pay. Just because I put a price on it, if I'm selling you a motor off of something and you need it, and I say that it's $1, and you say okay, then okay.
Mm-hmm. Do you? Obviously you want to start high so that you can get them down, but
it's hard to go up.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Have you ever found yourself asking so high that people are immediately turned off, or you start asking too low and then they immediately buy right then? You're I should have asked for more. How do you find that sweet spot, I guess?
Well, there's always that, oh, did I leave something on the table? And I find the best way is just don't get hung up on it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you make a profit? If you did, go on about your day. If you think you sold it too cheap, find another one, sell it again. If you paid too much for it, buy another one, buy it for cheaper than you paid for the first one, and do a cost average. I always just kind of say, don't get hung up on the little things.
Mm-hmm.
You can sit and worry about it all day long, but it's not going to fix it or change it. So just go on about your day. Do it again. Rinse and repeat. Find something else. If I could find all those items that I could sell for huge profits, I would, that's all I'd look for, but that's not the case either. So, there's
no magical items that are just worth way more than you can find them for.
I wish, that'd be great. Any of the magical items are illegal.
Ah, yes.
And
they're in high demand though.
They are that illegal is always in high demand. But there again, there's that word illegal. And I don't want to go to jail. So,
yeah, you've got a family and wife and kids and all that. It wouldn't be very.
No.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. Not,
I always,
not fun.
I will say this, that if I'm going to steal from you, it's going to be island money. And Andrew, do you know what island money is?
Money that's off the books?
No, that's enough money to go buy my own island.
Ah.
And since I don't know how to do, I don't know, that would be getting into somebody's system and doing something crazy. So
yeah.
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was going to ask you one last thing because I feel like we're kind of wrapping things up. But how is it, and I don't want this to feel super interviewy. This whole time I feel like I've been asking a lot of questions.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I like it.
It's been kind of fun because I haven't been able to really ask you a ton of businessy type of questions in the past. It's not that I didn't feel like I couldn't, but this situation lends itself to that kind of stuff. What is it like working so closely with your brother and your family and stuff? Because obviously a lot of people would be like, oh my gosh, I could never be in business with my brother. We always butt heads too much. Or, oh my gosh, I could never be in business with my dad. How do you balance that family work relationship, and what are some things you've learned that you could maybe pass on or something?
it's no relationship worth having is ever easy. That's the first thing, is just realizing that it's going to be hard. We're different people. But as long as we're going towards the same goal, having a purpose. My brother may have his way of getting there. My dad has his way, and I have my way. And we have arguments, and we have egos. So that it can be tricky. It's kind of like marriage. You have to be a little bit selfless and listen to one another. And it's not easy. It's not ever easy to have to listen to, you want to do it your way. It's kind of like the quarterback of the game. They want the ball in their hand to win the game. I have a saying that I say in my head quite a bit is, do you want to be right or do you want to get paid? I don't always have to be right, but my kids do like to eat. So you kind of have to
just swallow it, and
you learn how to swallow a little bit of pride. Eat a little humble pie. It's valuable. I mean, if to follow on that kind of path for a second, working with family is a blessing, and it's great to be able to do it. It's not easy, and it's not for everyone. It can be extremely rewarding, and sometimes when you're with them a lot, you don't want to be around them for a certain amount of time. But it's great, and just you deal with it. There was a thought that I was going to share with you, and I lost it there. So sorry about that. And it was somewhat relevant, but no, it's cool. Maybe we'll do another one of these days. And if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah. I was going to say, is there anything that, because like you were talking about in the beginning, we have the analytics of who's listening to this, who's the person who is listening to this. And there's always outliers. There's going to be people that I have no idea that's listening to this. There could be a 75-year-old woman listening to this. There could be a 6-year-old boy listening to this on his mom's iPhone. I don't know. But the main demographic that I know is, people that are kind of in that transitioning phase, that 20-year-old phase, I guess, of going from being a kid, being in school, to transitioning to like being an adult and working and having to fend for yourself. And there's going to be people that make it and there's going to be people that don't. And I guess what kind of like advice or what would you say to those people? Because I feel like you have a lot of thoughts on that. And we've already kind of touched on a lot of it, but what kind of stuff would you preach to them directly, I guess?
Trust themselves. That's what I would tell them. Trust it, go with it. If that's what you want, do it.
But it's got to be what you actually want, not what you think your parents want for you or what your friends want.
Graveyards are full of unfulfilled dreams. And what that means is, do you want to go to your final day and say, I wish I had don't leave a stone uncovered. If you want to go do something, go do it. The only thing that's limiting you is you. If you're driving down the road listening to this and you look over in the car next to you within the next couple of minutes and you see somebody that doesn't look like you, that's from another country, or you're the person from the other country, they've either gotten here because they're wanting opportunity or you've come here because of opportunity. Again, it just comes down to you. You're the only thing that's going to slow you down. There's going to be ups and downs and pitfalls along the way. But that's what builds character. That's what builds knowledge. And that's what builds the stuff you need to know how to handle situations through life. I say study a little bit every day, whatever it is. If you want to be a musician, you got to study it a little bit every day. If you want to be an artist, you got to paint a little bit every day. You got to practice. You got to see what other people are doing. Perfect your craft, whatever it is. If you want to be a business person, study your product. Study your product line. Understand what it is. If you want to be whatever it is, just study a little bit about it every day. And if you can do that, then it'll get you one step closer to whatever it is, the dream that you want. And
when the opportunity comes, you have enough knowledge that you can take it.
Preparation, baby.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. You got to be prepared for that opportunity when it comes.
Like if someone comes up to you and starts talking about a business proposition and all this stuff, and you don't know the right lingo, you don't know the right terms, you don't know the stuff, then you're gonna seem like an idiot. But if you're listening to business podcasts and you know how certain things work and you know what certain abbreviations are, or whatever, even just listening to people talk about that stuff, you can learn enough to know your way around it a little bit, and then when an opportunity comes, you're kind of prepared. And
yeah, I mean, and that just goes back to studying it every day.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Find what it is, and also, I mean, I believe in don't just get locked down on a one thing so hard that you can't see that there's other opportunities. If you want to be whatever it is, just look at the big picture.
Yeah, but it's funny because also like when you didn't say I want to be this when I grow up, because it's still kind of like right now you're like I'm a this, but I'm also a this, and I also kind of dabble in this, and I do this, and I do this, and I've diversified in this way, and blah blah blah. I've heard the analogy of Tarzan going from one end of the jungle to the other end of the jungle. And he doesn't know which vines he's going to grab. But when he chooses one vine, that's going to take him to maybe 3 more vines. And he can grab one of those 3, and he grabs that one. And he doesn't go just a straight path across the jungle. He's going to zigzag all around because of the vines that he chooses. And I think that people get so locked down on like, I'm going to be a real estate agent, and I'm going to go to school, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. And they have all these check boxes that they want to check. And it's great to have like an idea of where you want to go and all this, but
Absolutely.
I think don't get hung up on like the steps along the way, not going the way you think they should go.
Yeah, and if you're doing something the way somebody else did it, then you're still not doing your way. Great artists are great artists because they've done it their way. It's I love that analogy about Tarzan. You have to, like you said, real estate agent. Well, I mean, you could go out and just sell houses, but why not buy a house and then sell that house? There's so many opportunities out there in this world. I don't know how many billion people are on the planet.
It's like 7, almost 8, I think.
That's a lot of people to do business with.
Mm-hmm.
This is a big world. And if all you're thinking about is what's going on around you, whether you're in Suwanee, Georgia, or Johns Creek, Georgia, or if you're in New York City or LA or Chicago or wherever it is, or, Des Moines, Iowa. Stop thinking about just that area. Think bigger. Live where you are, but think bigger. The other thing is invest where you are. Invest in your own community. Invest in the people around you, and they'll help you grow. Tell somebody else your vision. That's another thing. If you tell somebody else your vision, let them help hold you accountable to it.
That's what I did with this podcast.
If somebody's holding you accountable to your vision, whether it's your parent or your best friend or your barber or whoever it is, let them say, hey, did you do this today? And if you get angry that you didn't do it, either you didn't want it bad enough or you want it so bad that you're now mad at yourself because you didn't do it. So just get after it.
Yeah. I remember one time we were sitting here and we were looking out the window and you said, look at all the stuff that's just literally out this window. There's literally millions of dollars floating around just out this window. You've got a gas station across the street making money. You've got restaurants across the street. You've got cars that cost, tens of thousands of dollars rolling by. You've got the guy who made the street. You got the guy who made the stoplight. You've got the guy, you've got all these things. You've got literally, like you said, millions, maybe even tens of millions of dollars.
And the truck that brought everything there.
And all that money is just floating around and someone made it. And you've just got to figure out how to insert yourself into that equation of making it.
Don't be afraid to do the dirty job. Don't be afraid of it. Dirty jobs pay. This country was founded on dirty jobs. Steel mills, railroads, tons and tons of jobs that were created by building this country. And those jobs are still out there. If you're somebody who's driving down the road right now and you are fed up with somebody else getting the job, go do something about it. It's okay to go frame a house. I wish, the truth of the matter is, I wish that I was better at framing and doing some of those things. I really do. And one of these days I'm going to take the time and I'm going to learn how to do it properly. Not that I have a problem with anybody coming to this country. I don't. I just say come here legally. Do it legally. I think that if you have a problem with something, just go do it yourself and go. There's a bunch of money to be made in framing houses or painting them or siding.
Or being a garbage man or anything.
Hey, the person was a garbage man first before they owned Waste Management. Any of those companies, they had to work their way through it.
Had to know the garbage industry.
You got to know it from the bottom to the top. That's the way it works. There was only one that was born with all the knowledge. So
there we go.
It's been a pleasure.
Dude, yeah, this was really fun. I feel like this is a good place to wrap things up. If people want to reach out to you, I know you said your email box is already crazy cluttered or anything, or if people want to find you on Facebook, or what's the best way if someone wanted to ask you a question or follow you or any kinds of stuff or anything you want to shout out? Just
on Facebook. I'm not on it a tremendous amount. But
the Imperfect Weathermen, though.
Imperfect Weathermen, that's a funny thing that we do. Here's what I'm going to tell them is just follow up with Andrew. Andrew will if you've got something serious you want to talk about, just feed it through you. And
I'll vet them. I'll be the vetting, the funnel.
If somebody had a question, I'll take the time.
Sounds good.
I'll take the time to talk to them. Or perfect. You never know. There may be an opportunity out there for somebody. Because again, I'm looking for somebody if they want to follow up on spreadsheets. If that's your thing, there's a place for you, I promise.
Mm-hmm.
So it's beautiful Swanee, Georgia.
There we go. Soon to be home of the, hopefully, hangout spot.
Yeah, we're working on a cool little venture next door. That'll be. We'll do another thing on that piece.
Yes, I love it. That'll be super fun.
Absolutely.
Well, cool, dude. Thanks for being on the show, and we'll see you later, everybody. Boom. There you have it, folks. Again, Brian is living proof why you want to diversify and get yourself into many different sectors. I want to thank Brian again for being on the show, giving us insight into what he does and his opinions. Like he said, if you want to reach out to him, you can reach out to me first, and I'll forward any requests on to him. But you made it. You made it to the end of the show. I'm guessing that since you made it this far, you enjoyed what you heard. And if you enjoyed this episode, I think that you would really enjoy going back and listening to the most downloaded episode of all time, and that is episode 50 with Ed Bolian. And Ed is another guy who's very diversified. He's kind of hard to pin down, just like Brian. But in a nutshell, Ed is the former head of sales at Lamborghini Atlanta, and about a year and a half ago, he started a company called VinWiki. But what you might not know is that Ed, you may remember the story floating around a few years ago about the guy who drove his Mercedes coast to coast. That was Ed. 2,904 miles faster than anyone in history. That drive is called the Cannonball Run, and his story was all over major media outlets, and it kind of catapulted him into the national spotlight. It's probably my favorite podcast to date. Don't quote me on it, but it's an awesome episode. You should definitely go check it out. Like I said, I think that if you liked this episode, you would definitely enjoy that one as well. Another episode that I think you would enjoy is episode 6 with Parker Stiles. Parker is the owner of Barrington Acquisitions, a company that he runs with his wife, where they purchase, renovate, and sell or rent out single-family houses and other properties. And he has an amazing story of how he went from being an unemployed college graduate to now running that business with multiple employees that basically just pays him while he sleeps. You know, it's automated. And on that episode, Parker gave some practical information on how he started his company and what it takes to run a successful business. And this was another one of the most popular episodes I've ever had, and I know that you'll enjoy it. All right, episode 69 is coming up next with Noelle Jackson. Noelle is an entrepreneur, a creator, professional dancer. Her company, LPR, works with some of the best lifestyle and hospitality brands around the country. Not only do they offer media relations, but they have evolved over the last couple of years to incorporate more content marketing, like social media advertising, content creation, and email marketing, which is completely necessary for brands in today's digital world. And I literally just got done recording that episode about 20 minutes ago. I'm sitting outside of a Starbucks right now near her house, and I'm about to upload this episode, but I cannot wait for you guys to hear that episode. Should be coming out on Thursday, so if you're listening to this, it'll be 2 days. If you want to support the show, if you made it this far, best way to do that is to share it with a friend. The other best way to do that is to go to iTunes and rate it 5 stars. I think I'm up to 52 or 53 reviews on iTunes. It would be really, really helpful if you can rate it. That would be awesome. Extremely helpful in getting featured on iTunes. Something that's really important to me and the growth of this podcast is to get featured on iTunes. So please, please, please go rate and review. If you want to follow me on social media, you can go to my website, andrewdeitch.com. You can find the links to everything there. And that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks so much for listening, and I will see you guys on Thursday for episode 69 with Noelle Jackson.
If you're looking for a Jumbotron, I may know where one is.